We're back. We're back. What a shame. What a great shame. We had 19 live viewers. We had a technical problem. It happens occasionally on here. Well, more than occasion. It happens on a regular basis. And I think I had the wrong Wi-Fi. I was tuned into the wrong Wi-Fi. Let me just see if I can get it back up. I do apologise for that this morning, but it happens, and that's all there is to it. We can't do nothing about it. It's done. So what we need to do, we just need to get on with the live stream now again this morning. We're talking about bad paving this morning. Let's just remind our viewers, we'll go through it again because we're going to be reminding our viewers of what the channel is about, because we'll have new viewers as and when they call. It was buffering a little while ago. I don't know what it's like now. If Alison can give me an update, it'd be good. If you can hear me, whoever's watching this morning, if you can hear me loud and clear, that would be appreciated. I even set my airplane mode on and I was still having calls coming in, so I'm not quite sure what was going on there. I do apologise about it. We're on the BT Hub now and we're connected. So here we are. Welcome to Saturday Morning Live, where we talk about good things and bad things, and we talk about the consumers and the contractors, and we bring us together. Just get rid of that again. I'm still having messages about that, so hopefully that's gone now. And here we are. So we're talking about bad paving. I don't know, we had quite a number of viewers joining, so if you join, it'd be good to hear who you are and where you're from. I've lost my train of thought, but I'm going to get it in a moment. I'm going to compose myself. I'm going to get on it. Carl Button from East Sussex. Carl, many thanks for rejoining me this live show this morning, and thanks for coming back. I really, really appreciate it. We'll get on with it this morning. Very unprofessional, that's happened, but that's what it's all about. That's what makes it interesting, and that's what makes it real when things go wrong. So we're talking about bad paving this morning, because we got to remind ourselves the reason we started this channel was so I could put myself in front of customers and be able to show them what I'm actually doing and what I do on a regular basis, and that I could showcase my work so they could see what was going on. And slowly but surely I started doing some of those how-to videos, and then we started building community with you guys, and we can share our knowledge. And sharing your knowledge is actually good because people can learn from it and avoid those costly mistakes. Dino Dinosaur, hello from London. Dino, good to see you, bud. Thanks for joining this morning. I love it when people come on here and say where they're from. I'm interested in you and I want to know where you're from. Style Porcelain Paving. Hi, John and Alison. Den, good morning. How you doing? Good to see you. What a beautiful day, isn't it? We're live now this morning. So let's get back to it. So one of the questions that came in there was, how do you get rid of mortar stains on paving? Well, it can be a real problem if it's sandstone or even concrete in some cases, because sandstone and concrete has a porosity value, and what happens, it draws all those minerals down into the paving, which isn't good at all. Such a shame I'm going back to this now. We had 19 live viewers just a minute ago and it was up and running, but we'll get back there. I feel as if I've let you down this morning, but I'll get on with it. And I'll try and deliver a coherent, concise podcast this morning on Saturday. Let me just go back before we talk about the paving a moment. I've always worked a Saturday. Saturday, it was always a must. From a young lad working on the groundworks many years ago up in Essex, in Harwich, Dovercourt, North East Essex many years ago. My old boss, John Norman, we used to work for a company called Brooks and Wood and doing a lot of those Bovis sites up in Essex many years ago. And when I'm talking about many years ago, I'm talking back in the 80s, in the mid 80s. That's where it takes me back from 84. Hi Lee, thanks very much. Thanks for having the patience and coming back. Yeah, back in the 80s and doing all those groundworks, pulling all those foundations and doing all those oversights, drainage and roadways, tarmacking, etc. And then it slowly got into the paving when those Londoners were moving up to North East Essex, spending all their money and selling their two up, two down in London and buying a 4-bedroom detached house with a detached garage. It was boom time. And then the recession hit. We got to use that word very easily because recessions do come and go. And when it came, it came with a vengeance. The work just slowed up completely, and it was horrific. It was a horrific time, but we got through it. And if you survive, you thrive. That's the words for the day. If you survive, you thrive. Look, we got 12 live viewers. We're nearly back up there. 13 live viewers. Thanks for rejoining this morning. We did have a technical problem this morning, but we're back on air now. So as you come and join the live stream, if you can give it a big like, that'd be absolutely fantastic. It's difficult to explain how to when I'm doing a live stream on how to give a like, but YouTube, like the algorithms, will get it out to more people. 13 live viewers. So this channel is here to help people, and that's what it's grown. It's not just about me and my work and what I do. It's about you and answering the questions. And the fact is, I want to have all the answers to all of it. In some cases on here, on this channel, there are people that will come up with coherent answers to what's going on. I don't know if we've got a live caller in this morning. I try to arrange a few things in the week, but as usual, everybody's busy. But with me, I will always give you my time. The thing I was actually saying this morning was I always worked to Saturday to 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Saturday morning was a must. There's no ifs or buts about it. But you would go in on a Saturday simply because you knew that you had the rest of the afternoon off. Mario, back now. Thanks, Mario. Thanks for rejoining. Mario, if you can just give us a like, that'd be absolutely great. I don't know how many likes we've actually got at the moment. We've got none. We've got 16 live viewers. We're back up. Let's see if we can get 16 likes. Have we got 16 likes? Not quite sure if we're having a look on there. 14 watch at the moment. So thanks for joining. Richard Dowd has just joined us. Good morning, Richard. Good morning, Johnny, boy from sunny Staffordshire. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. So, Richard, what we've talked about this morning, one of the questions that come through. Good morning, Alison. She's saying good morning to Dan. Look, we were talking about mortar. Mortar can be a problem in the sandstone. It draws it down. It's got a high porosity and it will suck all those minerals down into your paving, and it's not good at all whatsoever. Yeah, we show that. Thanks, Richard. Like and sub. I didn't realise if you could still watch this, or if you could watch this if you haven't subbed to it. That's a new one on me. But we're back, and when we talk about mortar dragging down all those minerals, discolouring your pavement, it's not good at all. But you will find that it's not so bad with porcelain, but nevertheless, people are having problems across the country. I've talked about this for some time. We're going to try and get Graham from Floor Seel on here, or Bob from Lithothin, and talking about staining and how you get rid of that problem. But I think the thing is, what you've got to try and do, first and foremost, whether you're a contractor or a consumer or a DIYer doing these jobs, you have to think about keeping things clean as you go in. And I always have a bucket of water and a sponge with me at all times, without a doubt. And I keep things clean as I go. But on occasions, you do miss things when you're carrying that slab over or that paving and you've got slurry on the back and it drops down. But what you'll find is with the porcelain, with the slurry, and Mario, I don't know if you've found this yourself, but with the slurry on the front of the porcelain, depending on what it's like, it doesn't tend, even the next day, it doesn't tend to stick. I've had some slurry where I've missed it, gone back over the weekend. Oh, we got a caller coming in this morning. Don't know, we got calling in this morning. Here we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good morning. Who we got here?
It's Graham.
Graham, I was just talking about you this morning.
Yeah. Well, here I am. I live in a technological black spot, so I was working from home. But
right.
I thought if I give you a ring on this number, I'll sound like a Dalek. So I've driven up the hill, so I'm sat in a car with the air conditioning on.
Well,
with a better signal. So here I am anyway.
Right, great. Well, I'm absolutely blown away that you've actually joined us this morning. We've had a bit of a problem this morning, and just explain to you what's going on here now, Gray. Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce you in just a moment, but what I'm doing is I'm live streaming from my office now. We've got 15 live viewers. We had about 20 just a little while ago, but we had a technical difficulty. I was trying to deal with that, and we're back on air. We've got 15 live viewers at the moment. It's Saturday morning live with Johnny Boy, and one of the first questions that came in this morning, Graham, was about mortar stains and how you get over it. So, without any further ado, Graham, can you just introduce yourself before you actually explain, before we get into the details of mortar stains, etc.?
Okay. Well, I'm Graham Smith, and I run a company called Floor Seel. We're a small company that sells cleaning and sealing products for natural stone, tiles, anything really. I used to be involved in sort of cleaning and renovation of floors, if you like. So I've had practical experience of doing it and done what a lot of people have done, gone all around the houses looking at this product, that product, trying to work out what was in the bottles, how they all worked.
Right.
And eventually ended up running my own company. So yeah, that's what I do now. So hopefully we try a bit harder than other people. We're probably a little bit more approachable. So yeah, that's me, and that's us.
Right, great. Listen, I know you're a talker and I want to allow you to talk, but I want to just try and help you what's going on here. I love how you introduce yourself then. I've just actually shared your link on the live stream now because I'm watching the big screen, and I watched the big screen and got the camera going on simply because I can actually read it a lot better because my eyesight's failing because I'm an oldie now, Graham. I'm an oldie, I'm 57. Mario Rizzi says, treatment for efflorescence.
The treatment for efflorescence is normally, well, we have one, it's just called efflorescence remover, but it's what the question is with efflorescence is, what is it on? Because a lot of the efflorescence removers you cannot use on things like limestone or something, if you like, cement based. So if you're trying to get rid of efflorescence, normally you would wash it with a solution. It will take that salting off, but you need to be aware of what you're actually treating.
Okay.
This is just basic chemistry. Basically, you don't want to be using something on the sort of acidic side of the pH scale on something which is acid sensitive, such as limestone, travertine, marble.
Yeah, I'm not going to sorry to interrupt you, but can we just, so we've got a question about efflorescence. It's a common problem when we go onto a new estate. Sometimes you see efflorescence down the side of the brickwork. It's so paramount everywhere you go. It just seems to be there. But could you just explain what efflorescence is, Gray? Can you tell us what it is?
It's just a salting. It's basically a salt that bleeds out of the surface, and it could bleed out like you see on a brick wall, just because it's a new brick wall. It gets wet or it's drying out. And you get a salt staining. It's usually in the format of a powder. It can, and certainly on old floors, old Victorian floors with lime screeds, it can look more like a fur. I've seen it grow 3 inches high off a floor before now, where it's been a very slow drying floor in a very old house. It's basically acid sensitive. It's an acid sensitive material, if you like. So theoretically, it's easy to get rid of, but there are some caveats on that.
Yeah, great. Look, this is fantastic. I'm absolutely blown away this morning. I don't want to use those words, I'm super excited, because everybody seems to be using that at the moment. It sounds a little bit silly, but I am blown away this morning. And I just want to explain to you, I wanted to interrupt it sometimes because there are questions that come in. Somebody's just said that you can use maybe lemon and juice on localized areas. But I remember when I lived in Essex many years ago, I bought a house, and down in the basements, it was flooded years ago, and the salts was actually from the sea. The salts was trapped in, and when you said that, that just reminded me about, it was literally 3 to 4 inches thick, all on my basement floor. So I had to dig all that out. I had to put a new floor in, new membrane, and it was hard work. But let me just, so it just reminds you of what we're doing at the moment. We've got Richard Down says, I'm soon to be having a porcelain patio and block paved drive. I'm looking at which sealants to use. So great to hear from Graham. And we got a caller from London. I got to tell you their names. His name's on YouTube. Hair Lip. I use lemon juice concentrate left on for 3 to 4 or 5 minutes and wash off with a stiff bristle brush later. Carl Button says treatment for efflorescence on sandstone paving ? Can you enlighten us with sandstone?
Well, you can't. What you can do with sandstone is you can use as what I call a normal efflorescence remover, because, well, you probably know what I'm like. I'm going to go off in all sorts of tangents in a minute, but I'm going to restrain myself. But
good.
Generally speaking, with sandstone, is you can use a normal efflorescence remover. What you've got to watch out for is, and just touching on the person who said you could use lemon juice in a localised area, that's because lemon juice is actually acidic, so there is some truth in that. Whether it's powerful enough to actually remove it, if the efflorescence is more severe, is another question. But on sandstone, you get contradictory information about using acidic-based products, because sometimes people will say don't use anything acidic because it can promote rusting, which it can. It can in certain sandstones, particularly Candler grey sandstone.
And rusting is like bleeding, I suppose, is it, Gray?
Well, it's where you've got an iron content in the stone, and it starts to oxidise, forming a rusting effect. So you get a lot of oranging going on, but that'll typically happen on a sandstone if you use a particular kind of acid, which is hydrochloric, which is what we typically know as brick acid or brick cleaner.
Okay.
But if you use different products, which nevertheless are still acidic, not only are they known to remove rusting, they'll also take efflorescence off. But what you always need to do, and this is a thing that we've tried really hard to kind of almost educate people, is when you're using a cleaning and sealing product, and it doesn't matter who you bought it off, always test it first, because we get pictures of plain grey sandstones which have either had rusting or efflorescence, and they've used an efflorescence remover. They haven't tested it, and I've had a couple recently where they've gone a bit white and patchy, and the white is where the efflorescence remover is starting to attack just the natural iron content in the stone.
Right.
And all of these problems are avoidable because usually if it's new, somebody's got an off cut, or often they've got somewhere out of the way they can test the product first. So always test them. Always test them. It's worth testing them.
Right, great. I'm just going to. This is how this show works to try and help all the questions I've got coming in. Just to let you know, we've got 26 live viewers at the moment, so it's going good. Just to let you guys know who are watching this live stream at the moment, we've got Graham from Floor Seel. I met Graham on the phone over a year ago now, and we've been having lots of conversation. And Graham makes a lot of sense in what he actually talks about. When you're using, you have a new patio laid, whatever it is, sandstone, porcelain, limestone, whatever, I think it's clear, and I think Graham would agree with me, that problems start to arise after the contractor is gone, whether it's through mortar stains, efflorescence, and a number of other problems that occur, iron deposits forming in this rusty colour. It's like a bleed that's coming through. But Graham, just to read you a couple of the comments that we have, because it's not fair on you're not seeing it. Mario Rizzi says, not in Bedford, he says, not a fan of sealing any natural stone. He says, how soon after laying new sealing paving do you recommend? Dino the dinosaur says, Johnny boy, about the workmanship I do. He said, what would be your tips for finding a good paving company? And I think we're talking about Carl Button says treatment for efflorescence on sandstone paving. So we're still at it. Gray, you touched upon something which is really important. You're a consumer, you've had your patio all laid and it's looking good, and then you have a problem. And what you said was, don't start treating it until you actually identify what the problem is, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. And what we get a lot of, and this touches on one of your sort of listeners there's comments about how long to leave a paver before you seal it, for instance, is don't think that all sealants are the same. And I don't mean that in terms of, one companies are better than others. I mean, categorise your sealant as to what it is, because if you were using what I would call an older style sealant, which would be probably a form of an acrylic, they're dry on the surface and they're film forming. So if you, and this is also I'm going to tie this back into efflorescence in a minute, or what people think is efflorescence.
Yeah.
We get lots of pictures where they'll say, I've got efflorescence on my patio. The first thing that I ask is, have you sealed it? Because if they've sealed it and they've used an acrylic, and there's some very well-known sealant makes you can pick up in builders merchants or anywhere else, they don't necessarily tell you what those sealants are, but they're film forming in their acrylics.
And when you say film forming, Graham, can you define that? Like
it's what I would term as a topical sealer. And as the name suggests, it dries on the top. So it dries as a film, almost like a skin or a lacquer. And if you seal something that's just been laid and like a natural stone, and it has a film on the surface and there's moisture still bleeding out of it, you run the risk of trapping it. What happens when you trap it is usually that sealant, even if you can't particularly see it goes kind of grey and white and patchy. So we get the question posed to us, I've got efflorescence because they've Googled it and they think they've got efflorescence. What they've actually got is trapped moisture. And if they actually strip that sealant off, that whiteness and greyness will go with it because it's not efflorescence, it's trapped moisture. It's moisture sort of trapped within the matrix of the sealant.
Right. Okay.
So there's a lot of... go on, sorry.
No, I'm listening to it. I just find that really interesting. It's good.
Right. Well, the other thing leading on from that is one thing you've got to watch out for with efflorescence is how long it's been running for. So if, for instance, you got a bit of an efflorescence reaction from a patio, typically late in the summer, it may not really start bleeding efflorescence out of it until the spring. And in actual fact, it might just run its own course anyway.
Right, okay.
But one of the things that we used to find, if we were working on a particularly old floor, places like York, which is, it's got a very high water table. They really generally don't have cellars in York because they'd all be full of water. Yeah. But a lot of the old floors there were laid on lime and onto dirt. Now their efflorescence problems have been running for about 150 years.
Ah, right, okay.
So it becomes calcified, and basically it's so hard you can't get it off.
Right.
But it's basically run for too long, if you like.
Look, Gray, I'm gonna just better at this point. Look, just to let you know, we got over 20 people watching us now, Gray, and there's this topic, this conversation. We've talked for ages about this. We're going to continue with this theme at the moment, but I've got to just point out is that there's so much to cover and to explain to somebody when they've had a patio laid, isn't there, Graham? In this, there's so many things that we can actually talk about on this. But I think what we need to understand is that before you even consider a sealer or a treatment for the paving that you've got, you have to identify what the problem is. Yeah. And you talked about films then on surfaces. What we don't want to do, and if I can explain in layman's terms, is that we don't want to block anything that's migrating through the stone, do we, really?
No. You any of that vapor that wants to come out, you want to let it out. And generally, if something dries slowly, that's when you tend to get more efflorescence. If it dries rapidly, you tend to see less of it or none of it even.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. So, could you just repeat that again, Greg? Because I'm taking that in myself, and not just the viewers. I'm intrigued by this.
Well, just what we noticed. If you again, this is just the best analogy I can give you, but you can apply this to a natural stone. But if you were working on a very soft tile floor in the dead of winter.
Right.
And you cleaned it because possibly you'd uplifted parts of it and relaid it and done whatever you'd done to it, and you really cleaned it. You'd used quite a lot of water, and a lot of that would soak into the tile, down through the tile into the screed underneath. Now, in summer, it would dry very, very quickly, but in the winter, that moisture has lots of time to kind of sink in very deeply, sit there, and then slowly bleed off the surface, and that's when you tend to see more efflorescence.
Yeah.
So the speed at which something dries can affect whether you see efflorescence or not.
Great. Look, just a question coming in. Mario Ritchie says you don't see efflorescence on porcelain, but you could get efflorescence coming through a cementatious joint, couldn't you? On a porcelain.
Well, I'll tell you where you might see efflorescence on porcelain. Well, I say efflorescence. It's something a little bit different, but the treatment is similar. If you get a split level patio,
yeah,
and you've got an upper area which might be porcelain and a lower area, sometimes after laying, you get like a white bleed mark coming out of the joint, and this will be on the lower area. And that's what's sometimes described as leachate staining.
Yeah, I've had this. Yeah,
but the treatment is basically the same, but you tend to find leachate staining is something where you might not be able to cure it. You might be able to keep getting rid of it, but it may well come back, and it's to do with just the construction of the patio, I suppose.
Yeah, and if I can clarify this for our viewers, I suppose what you're talking about is when I've had the riser in a split level system and I've got a good concrete bed on my riser on my next step, but you'll have leaching coming through the ground, which leaching bring in all those mineral deposits, and the only place it can escape is the weak point, and the weak point, as it's always been known as, is the joints, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we get quite a few pictures of leachate staining. It's often on porcelain, or sometimes we've seen it on big sets of. We had one the other day on a big set of sandstone steps, and they were trying to get rid of it, and they were struggling with it. And I said to them, watch out for the fact that if it's calcified and it's gone hard, you're not going to get it off. Right, not with a chemical anyway. I mean, you get into abrasion, and then there's all sorts of problems with abrasion because you may abrade the very material it's bleeding out over. So
what Graham's talking about then, when it's calcifies, you're talking about really crystallising a deposit, aren't you, Graham? Yeah.
Yeah, it can set like concrete, and if it's intermingled with the surface, so I don't know. Let's say it's on the side of a building on very old brickwork.
Yeah.
How do you abrade that off? And the classic example is, well, you blast it, but obviously that's not possible on a porcelain, and many surfaces you can't do it. Particularly on historic buildings or whatnot. I know we're talking about patios here, but
but
this just keeps expanding out into. There's all sorts of reasons why you might follow one technique above another, depending on what you're working on.
Yeah.
But just touching on something else you said earlier about identifying the material you're working on.
Yeah.
The one that we hit constantly is somebody who's washed a black limestone patio with an acidic base cleaner. And the heartbreaking thing is with that, is sometimes they've used a resin-based grouting system, and it's the residue from the resin-based grouting system that they're trying to remove, and an acid wouldn't work on a resin anyway. So not only have they used the wrong product for the residue that they've got, they've used an acidic product on an acid-sensitive material and just effectively destroyed the patio.
Right, great. Look, this is all so massively interesting. I'm just really excited about this, and I think that if our viewers know what was going on, we'd have a lot more on this morning about this. Just to remind our viewers where we are at the moment, we've got Graham here from Floor Seel at the moment, and we've got to be fair to Graham. He's given his time up this morning to try and answer some of the questions that I put to him on a regular basis. This is Saturday Morning Live with Johnny Boy. We've got Graham from Floor Seel, and we're talking about bad paving. Gray, can all this be prevented in some respect? Is there any way?
I would say the laying of the patio is going to make a big difference, isn't it? But just bear in mind that we're the people who don't lay them, we're the people who end up sorting out the issues. But I mean, you must have seen really basic things, absolute howlers like dotting and dabbing natural stone.
Great. I'm going to just read something now, and then I'm going to just pass a comment, and I want you to come back at me with that. Andy Jackson, good morning, Andy Jackson. Stan says, I have seen calcification under bridges, and yes, old buildings, but also in caves, very similar to stalactites, carbonic acids made from rainwater, CO2 reacting to material, usually limestone. So, good morning, Garth Williams. Gray, when we're talking about this leaching and how these minerals migrate, do we make the potential? How can I say? Is the potential of having a problem in your paving or your grout system? Because I can actually see problems in grout systems, even in porcelain. So if I was to use a cementatious grout, you could have like the wicking, the drawing effect of drawing the minerals through the grouting system. And I think that if you've got a bed or mortar bed, now tell me what your thoughts are, Gray. If you've got a mortar bed that's being laid, or the mortar bed is made up with lots and lots of water, okay, your bed is almost going to be biscuit-like, isn't it? And I would suggest that if you add a mortar bed that had more compressive strength, i.e. that it was more of a semi-dry with less water in there, would a more compressive mortar bed be more beneficial to trying to stop these problems, Gray? What's your views on that?
Yeah, I would say so, because one of the things that we get a lot of pictures of is where there's a light grey paving, usually sandstone, but this could apply to anything, and it gets what you call reflective staining. And the classic one, I'm not going to go on about dotting and dabbing, but the classic one is dotting and dabbing, where you can clearly see a reflection of each blob in each corner, because obviously there's voids underneath it. But if you actually look up information about reflective staining, the reasons given for it are using too much water in the bed, having, if you like, they've not dot and dabbed it, they've laid it onto what they thought was a full bed, but there are dips in it. It's concave.
Great.
There's areas where there may be moisture. And then they'll say sometimes you'll get information about the fact that somebody's been using a slurry primer and there's too much water in it. But the commonality in it all is it's too wet, or the concave areas, the hollows, if you like, behind the slab have been caused by possibly too much water. So you get effectively small voids.
Great. I love what you just come back to, and you just clarified. And we haven't never really spoke about this. Many years ago, I was a Marshalls approved installer, and I had an issue with, not with Marshalls, with a client, and I wanted Marshalls, and I always put myself on the line here and always put myself out there. I asked them once what constituted a full mortar bed. Now, moving on very rapidly to where I am now, is that what I do, Gray, and I've been laying paving for over 38 years now, and I'm not saying I'm good at it, but that's the fact is that's what I've been doing. So when I lay a unit now, no matter what it is, limestone, sandstone, porcelain, etc., is that I always lay my slabs twice. I lay it dry, okay? And we have to lay sandstone with a slurry on the back, unfortunately now, because the sandstone's so thin, it just sort of delaminates from the mortar bed. And I hear these idiotic comments sometimes, Gray, and I'm going to say it, is that people say wetter the better. I've never heard anything so ridiculous in all my life. And so what I do is I get my bed ready, I lay my unit, I tap down to where I want it to be, Gray, then I lift it off, then I fill those little voids that may be underneath, and then I'll slurry, and then I put my slab down. So I know that when I tap the slab down into that mortar, of which the mortar bed is of a semi-dry with less water in it, because surely, Graham, when you're actually adding more water in that mortar, it's just going to cause problems, isn't it, with more salts in the water, surely, or mineral deposits of some sort.
Well, the question is if you've got lots of water in it, where does the water go? Because the water is creating, it's not going to last. It's going to wick away. It's going to dry through the slab. So surely you've got a weaker substrate with voids in it.
Great. Let me just point, because I want you to continue with this and just to sort of not necessarily help you. Just remember, we've got 28 live viewers this morning. And if you're watching now, we've got Graham from Floor Seel now who's throwing some light on things. We've got to be aware that it's Saturday morning and it's his time. So we've got to be aware of that. And Graham's here to help you. If you have any questions at any time in the future, you can. Have you got an email address, Graham, where people could maybe drop you an email?
Yeah, we are. You can just send it to info@floorseel.co.uk, and we get lots of inquiries. I try and answer them all. I often do them late at night or first thing in the morning.
Oh, you're a bit like me, Gray.
I usually get back to people as long as I can answer it. But some of the things you get asked, which obviously is being discussed today, I'd love to have a load of simple answers, but
if they're not there, are they? They're not there. Graham.
But generally, questions lead to me asking them questions because often we don't get told what they're working on. They'll just we don't know whether it's limestone, porcelain, sandstone.
Look, Gray, I'm not going to stop you now. I want it to continue because this is what I like about you. You're coming back with it. We're it's like as if we're talking, as if we're sat in a pub and we're having a conversation about things. You're coming at me with things. Look, Gray, let me just explain something to you. Marshall's Paving. I'm not having a go at Marshall this morning. Number one manufacturer in the UK. You've got Brett and you've got a couple of other companies out there. But Tobermoor in Ireland, what they actually do with their paving, Graham, is that when they make those block paving, and the block paving has to have, and there's no ifs or buts about it, it has to have compressive strength to take the loads that they take in throughout their lifetime. But what Tobermoor do, Gray, there's a number of things. They have this thing called prime top, where they concentrate the colours in the top 10% of the block. And also what they actually do is that when their blocks come off the line, and it's amazing, Graham, when you see those blocks that have very little water in it. It's almost like, it's not powder, but it just stands up, and then these rams come down and hydraulically press the water into the molds. Then it comes off the line, they get stacked, and then they get put in these very tall steam curing ovens, Gray. And these steam curing ovens make the block a lot harder. But I tell you now, I'll tell you, this is the truth. This is fact. I remember years ago, probably about 7 years ago, coming back from Ireland, I went to see a guy in Cardiff, and he had laid a Marshall's driveway, and then a couple of weeks later, he had laid right next to it a Tobermoor paving product. And because of the steam curing, the Marshalls had efflorescence, white all over. The Tobermoor, nothing at all. So is there something? Sorry.
Well, that ties into something a contractor was saying to me this week, and he lays block paving, and he generally patios, porcelain patios, whatever. And we were discussing sealants, and this is again picking up on one of the questions earlier about when you should seal something, how long you should wait. It depends on what the sealant is, but a lot of sealants for block pavings are actually acrylics.
Okay.
And this guy was saying, he said, well, even though we lay them and we're asked to seal them, if we do it, we wait between 3 and 6 months before we'll do it, because in our view, block pavers are sopping wet after manufacture.
Yeah.
Now, that's out of my knowledge base, but it's just tied in with something you're saying there. So, it's if there's a lot of moisture in the process, yeah, and I must admit, when we hear about efflorescence, forgetting the vertical surfaces like brickwork and whatnot, and forgetting old floors, often it's on block paving.
Yeah, great. Do you know what? I'm actually thinking this morning, and I'm listening to you this morning. There has never been anyone that has been able to offer this advice as what I'm seeing online in any places. You'll see little articles about it, but I really appreciate you coming on this morning and talking about this. But I'm not finished with this at the moment. But it seems to be that the moisture and the damp is what we're discovering this morning seems to be the problem. And I think that because there's been, tell me if I'm wrong here, Gray, mate, but because there's been a shortage in products, getting product to site, they seem to be coming off the line and being laid quite fast, isn't it?
Quite possibly, because what we're seeing as a company that sells products, there's a massive problem with gaining supplies of containers to put sealers and cleaners in. There was a shortage of and a massive cost in cardboard. So you just have to imagine that kind of gets into everything, doesn't it? You know, just one thing about just going back to something you said about identifying what something is. If you've got efflorescence on a block paving and it's cement based, going back to the whole can you use a cleaning product to remove it? Again, the very cleaning product that will remove a salting can't be used in a cement based paver, because it's going to attack the paver as well. So it's a bit of you end up in that conundrum, and it's the same one people get onto with black limestone. They'll say, well, I've actually used the traditional sand and cement mortar to point the black limestone, but how do we get rid of the cement residues? And I'm forever sending emails about saying, well, this is catch-22. The very thing you want to use, which will definitely take your haze off, is going to start attacking the very material that the haze is on. And
I see.
Same with block pavers. A lot of the time, efflorescence will run its course. You can wash it off. Obviously, you just introduce water again, so it comes back.
I'd say
it may run its course, but it's having efflorescence or cement-based hazing on acid-sensitive surfaces, if you like.
Great.
Bit of a nightmare.
No, I'd say, mate, I think we've opened a can of worms here, right? And I think the thing is we've touched upon maybe that probably a way to prevent some of the things that we touched on, maybe to prevent these problems, is probably more compactable base, where, you know, with more compressive strength to stop the migration of mineral deposits going through. But what the other thing, Gray, you must see a lot of, and I know you do, is that when people grout patios, and everybody seems to be having these beautiful contemporary modern porcelain patios now, and it just seems to be that some contractors, they seem to mess up with the cleaning part of it, Gray.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The irony is, in terms of cleaning products, you shouldn't need us, because if the grouting is being done carefully and neatly, and where's the residue?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, but there's a very big difference with if somebody's laid an exterior porcelain,
right,
and they've used a cement-based grout. It's quite easy to get rid of the haze.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's probably the easiest thing to get rid of. But as it is, everything seems to be going resin-based.
And what's the problem with the resin, Gray? What's the problem with the resin?
To get rid of.
And why is it harder to get rid of, like, resin-based grouts? Why?
Well, I think partly because, as we've discussed before, porcelain has essentially an anti-slip finish, but sometimes it's got an anti-slip finish on steroids, and it's not really an anti-slip finish, it's actually just a full-blown texture. That's capturing some of the resin
which just in layman's terms, we're talking about the surface, aren't we? When when we talk about the surface, when it's capturing, some of these surfaces got a bit more of a porosity, not porosity, but it's lots of voids in them, isn't there?
Yeah, it's part. Again, still, it shouldn't, in theory, be a problem if you've been working carefully. I would say the thing that's happening at the moment, which is quite obvious, is look at the temperatures that are predicted on Sunday, Monday, and I think Tuesday.
Yeah.
Somebody out there is going to be grouting with a resin-based grout, possibly on a dark grey tile, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Gray, mate. I just got to tell you this. This is what I said on Monday to guys that I know. They were going to do some pointing, and I said, don't do it. don't grate. It's just too hot. It's gonna. There's lots of reasons it's not going to be any good. If you've got a dark porcelain product, it's going to draw the heat, and it's not going to be very good for the grate. Look, great. Just our friend here, one of the followers, he said, Hairlip72 says, I have a nice steam cleaner with a handheld attachment and a small nylon agitating brush. I may test that later. Rub on for 10 seconds at a time.
Right. Well, all I would say, if we're talking about cleaning in general, we used to clean up a lot of floors, and I'm digressing slightly here. But
no,
we used to clean up a lot of floors where there was a house with a steam cleaner in it, so we didn't think they were very effective. But in terms of removing resin-based grouting systems, there is some information out there, and also bear in mind, and you will probably know this better than me, there's a new grouting system coming out what feels like every week.
Graham,
I can't keep up with them.
I'm betting in there now. I'm betting in on you now, right? You are absolutely correct. I've never ever seen so many grouting systems that is out there. And what we got to try and do, Gray, would you agree that when you found one that works and ticks all the boxes, is it best to stay with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay with what you know. Stay with what you know. And I think the thing with the heat at the moment is, if you imagine this stuff, you put it in and it's essentially it dries, and it's going to dry faster because it's hot and the tile's hot. I've had this problem. I once had to try and seal a floor with an impregnating sealer on a floor where they could not, would not turn the underfloor heating system off. They turned it right down, and I did it. It was a nightmare. But imagine you're trying to grout a porcelain tile at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like having the underfloor heating system turned up to full.
Yeah, great. I think the thing is, what people have got to start realising, that the hot weather can be just as detrimental as the cold weather. Jonathan Mee says, remember the pre-grout system, never have any problems anymore. Lee Handy from Andy Groundworks in Liverpool, he says, why do bricklayers use lime in their mortar on stone? Is it to do with cement? Does cement affect paving the same way? Mario Ritchie says, is it going to be too hot to lay porcelain? Great. I think the thing about, to Lee's question, is that the reason they use the lime in the mortar is so on some of the old buildings with the stonework is just so they could move it around or adjust it. Again, it allows for the movement. I think the lime does, doesn't it?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's lime's something where, when I was tinkering around with Victorian tiles, and obviously we were into lime screeds all the time, I must admit I didn't know anybody who would then use lime to relay them.
Right, okay.
Partly, and this might touch into why some people mix it in. Sometimes they mix it in purely to do with colour. But also it cures more slowly. But then again, you're more prone to upsetting it if you've got too much water in it.
Great. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you a direct question at the moment. Do you think? Let me just see if I can put this right. What do you reckon the success rate is in some respects of like the patios that are being laid at the moment? Because I see so many pictures, Gray, of basically where the grouting has failed is in the cleaning.
Yeah, I mean, you can get, and this goes back to people who wash black limestone with acid, you can get people who've done an absolutely amazing job of laying the patio, and this sounds a bit, I've known this happen, but sometimes the press for time, they've got another job they need to get to, and they leave somebody on site to do the grouting who's not that familiar with it. Great.
Listen, mate, I got to tell you this, right, is that we're always under pressure to get to the next job, but I will not leave a job till it's finished and completed completely. I'm going to see a customer this afternoon, and we've gone so far over on this current project at the moment, but there's no way I'm going to leave this job till it's done correctly. I've explained to the customer there's no way. I've told them, it's me. I'm telling them as a contractor that it's not beneficial to grate their patio this week. Going to read some of the comments coming in at the moment. Mario says, is it going to be too hot to lay porcelain? And he says, should I give the lads a couple of days off? Jonathan Mee says, Nexus has just launched a new brushing grate for porcelain this week. LOL. Philip James says, I think it's important to involve the contractor from start. Includes choice of paving, as have multi experiences as the client does this. Look, Gray, the thing that we talk about, what contractors don't talk about is that when tilers lay paving inside, they're not affected by the ground measures underneath, and they're not affected by the weather conditions above, are they? Whereas the contractor outside is presented with these problems, and I think it's a different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that does come up, and this is normally from either DIYers or just general members of the public who've had something laid. If you get a resin-based grout system onto the face of your porcelain, unlike a cement-based system, which it's possible to remove the haze fairly quickly because the process is rapid. The chemical reaction is pretty much instant.
Yeah.
The process of removing a resin, even though we have got something which tries to remove resins, and I'll hold my hand up, it's not going to work on all of them.
Right. Okay.
But when you're trying to reverse a resin, it's a slow process. The products cost more money, and you need a lot more of them. And the thing that we always get asked is, can it affect the joint?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But the thing is it's like, well, what do you do? Do you just forget it and leave it, or rip the patio up, or what? But so this comes back to what we started discussing at the beginning. You don't need any of these products if you've been careful and you've worked very cleanly. And I think the thing that we hear catching people out all the time is warm weather. They're not that familiar with the product. They progress a reasonable, I suppose, meterage in terms of grouting.
Yeah.
And then they have a realization that it's not just drying, it's effectively dry.
Yeah, I think they get into panic mode then, and then they're in the mess. They're trying to cover all areas. All I would suggest to anyone who's actually watching this live stream this morning is that if you are grating a patio, only mix up what you feel that you can manage, okay? And what you'll find is that to identify the amount what you can manage is a difficult one, if you haven't used these products. And what Graham's saying here at the moment, some of the resin products can be really problematic. If you've got a cementitious grout system, that it is possible to remove the haze. Am I correct in saying that, Graham?
Yeah, the cement-based grouting is relatively, if it is just a haze, easy to take off. Resin-based grouts can be possible to take off, but can be impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. The other thing, of course, by using brushing grates that have a porosity value which allows the water to go through, is that good to allow water to go through joints on a new porcelain patio?
Well, possibly not.
Not if it's not migrating all the way through the sub base and moving and migrating away. It's just going to hold, isn't it? It's just going to.
But I don't know where the whole porosity of grout and resin on porcelains came from, because if you put a sand and cement joint in or some slurry-based thing, it's essentially a solid mass. And I know sand and cement jointing, in theory, has some porosity.
Yeah.
But if it's been packed down, it doesn't have a lot. I don't really get, apart from the supposed idea of allowing water to dissipate from porcelain patio.
No, I don't get it either, Gray. I don't.
Why it should be porous, and if it is porous, where's it really going?
No, it's not going anywhere at all, really, is it?
Just one thing that it never ceases to amaze me, and I had an email this morning from a chap who was asking about sealing a porcelain, which we haven't got the time to discuss sealing porcelains today because it's an absolute minefield.
Absolutely.
But one thing that has amazed me is people are having porcelain patios laid and they don't actually understand what the tile is. No. They don't understand that porcelain, as a general rule, is not porous.
No,
it's effectively it's a sealed material in its own right. In theory, it can't stain, and you don't need to seal it, even though we have got a sealant for it, which is for various reasons to do with problematical porcelains and colour issues and things like that. But it doesn't actually need sealing. So if you've got a non-porous tile, and then you've got a joint which has been left open on purpose to allow, I don't know, so it's porous. What's all that about?
Yeah, I don't know, Gray. I just think that they've all got their ideas about it, and I think that the unfortunate thing is that they're not. Sometimes some of these companies are not prepared to talk about it in depth because they feel they got a product that is simple and easy for people to use and think that it's okay and it's going to solve the problems, but it doesn't solve the problems or the issues that happens with the paving. Graham, it's a complete disaster, isn't it? When you've had that new patio laid, all the garden been laid, the pergola, the outdoor room, the planting, the raised beds, the paving, the pathway, and then the grouting happens, and it's just a complete disaster. It must be a horrible feeling, Gray, for these people who spent all that money.
Well, it is, and something that I can't answer, and I've not really got to the bottom of it yet, is we're getting reports of people in the midst of laying patios, which they say are porcelain, so we have to take that at face value that it definitely is a porcelain. And the dog's running off an area that hasn't been laid yet, and it's a particularly orangey, clayey soil.
Oh my God!
It's been running onto the porcelain, and they can't jet wash this mark out of the tile. They can't find a cleaning product that seems to remove it. But the question mark is how's it marking if it's a porcelain? And I'm getting the impression that as everybody realises there's an absolute what feels to me like an absolute frenzy to lay porcelain at the moment, that people are jumping on the bandwagon and producing porcelains, and surely there is a lack of quality
and knowledge in how to go about it. Great. Should the consumer, if they're considering and commissioning somebody to have some work done, should they know a little bit more about what the contractor's put in between those joints?
Well, I'd say so. I mean, if I was having a patio laid, I'd be looking in depth at what the tile is, how it performs, what it is, who the contractor is, possibly looking at the details of how the tile is supposed to be laid according to the manufacturer of the tile, and speaking to the contractor in depth about it.
Graham, absolutely 100%. It's been absolutely mind-boggling, but also it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here this morning, and I really appreciate you phoning me back. I had a bit of a problem this morning. Great, just to let you know, it's been quite a successful podcast this morning. We've had 29 live viewers, not all at once, but what we find when we look later at the analytics, we'll probably have about 300 or 400 people that have come and gone on this stream, and there's going to be people that'll be watching this later. Graham, do you have any objections if I can share your link onto the description in this video?
No, not at all. Oh. And at some point, I'll tell you what is worth discussing, because it's driving me loopy-loo. Is the whole term wet look sealer,
right,
which has been associated with porcelain, that one, I have that conversation. I can't even think about how many times a week. That one's a subject in its own right. And it's not because not necessarily because we do sell a sealant for porcelain. It's just the misconceptions about how sealants work, even on natural stone, not just porcelain.
Look, great. Listen, that's for another day, mate. That's for another day. And I just want to say thank you.
It's a massive one. That's a massive one.
Well, we'll hold back on that. We'll say that Gray was talking about wet look sealers. Gray, just to let you know what we try and do at this point. We've hit the hour mark. I can't believe how fast we've got here. It's time for me to say goodbye to you, and thank you for joining. And Greg, can you just plug your company very quickly, the web address and the email address, and then maybe, Greg, would you fancy doing something a little bit more with me in the future and talking about this topic?
Yeah, well, we are www.floorseel.co.uk, and the email is info@floorseel.co.uk. So yeah, anything cleaning and sealing, and sometimes we get involved in obviously the more problematical stuff and try and put you in the picture about what you can or can't do.
That's great. Thank you very much. What's the plans for the weekend, Graham? Before you go now, I want to know what you're doing. Are you sat in the garden, sunning yourself out?
Tragically, I'm probably going to go to work.
Right? Oh, are you really? Well, look, listen. If you want to give us a call after and have a chat, there'd be no problem at all. I don't want to keep you too long.
All right.
Graham from Floor Seel, thank you very much, and our viewers, thank you, Graham. Have a great weekend.
No worries, it was a pleasure.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. That was absolutely amazing. Lee says when we used to pour concrete slabs on hot days, we would cancel the knot weather. Absolutely. Lee Martin, the big BFLG. I bought an 18-volt Makita jointing gun, and I managed to join 60 square meters in around 4 hours for 2 days. That I had to work hard to keep it clean, though. I hate grubby tools. Yeah, absolutely. What is the best sealer for limestone? Missed him. He's gone now, Lee. I'm sure Graham would have told us if I would have asked, and that's another topic of conversation. That was Graham from Floor Seel. Graham, thank you very much for joining, and I apologise this morning for the technical error. I love doing these podcasts on a Saturday morning now. It's only for an hour. I have the rest of the day off, and it's great, isn't it? It's great when we come on here and we can discuss all good things landscaping and bad things landscaping. If you've got any questions or any opinions that you want to share with me, drop me an email at info@greentoplandscapes.co.uk, or you can go to the website, which is www.greentoplandscapes.co.uk. And listen, thank you very much. Thank you for joining. That was really, really interesting. If there's anything you want to talk about in the future, just let me know. We want some information, Carl Button. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Alison, for putting up with me this week and for the rest of our lives together. There we are. It's over. Have a great weekend, and listen, chuck that sun cream on, and make sure you drink plenty of water, and please, please, please don't grout in the heat. Brian, no problem. You take care, guys. Have a great weekend. All the best. Bye-bye.